Hello and welcome to another polling station special, of course focusing on the US election, and this time I'm very pleased to be joined by writer and journalist Emma Burnell. Emma, how are you?
Well, potentially I have coronavirus, but really I've probably just got a bad cough.
Gosh, the dilemma lots of us are facing at the moment. In happier, calmer climes, he says, looking at his notes, what do you think of the US election? Where do you see, how do you see the race sort of very close to the end, actually possibly really in the end game, given how many people have already voted?
It's extraordinary, isn't it? The early voting. God, it's so hard because the logical side of me that follows the modelling and looks at the polls and sort of, really tries to dig into the numbers and be a sensible analytical journalist is saying that, Joe Biden's at 88% to win. I'd bet on that horse. But the side of me that remembers 4 years ago is just so terrified that we're missing something and that something's going to happen that is unexpected, because the unexpected does happen. I mean, I think the last 4 or 5 years has been fairly good proof of that. If you were to put £20 in my hand and ask me to put it on one of the candidates, I'd put it on Biden. But my heart would want me to put it on Trump so that one way or the other I get something out of it.
Yeah, the emotional hedge. I definitely believe that's probably going to be a factor in quite a few bets of that state that we see around that time. We talk about missing anything. In 2016, it was non-college voters in certain states which weren't polled as well or as frequently this time. Do you have any idea of what we could be missing possibly, if there's anything possibly lurking between the surface?
I mean, I think there are issues with just getting to people through polling now. Actually getting enough people to answer the phone or fill in a survey online or what have you. I know that all of the pollsters have tried really hard to adjust their models in order to take into account what they were missing last time around. So they are weighting very differently. And they've been doing more of those state by state polls because the national polls ultimately don't mean a thing. Joe Biden could win by 10 points, but if he loses enough of the electoral college, that's it, game over.
Yeah.
I think there is a great deal of voter suppression happening. I think that's obvious. It's not quite people walking around with guns outside polling stations yet, although wait for polling day, because I'm sure we're going to see stories of that. But, when you look at those lines going round and round and round and round, you're stretching for literally miles, that's voter suppression, not being able to vote easily and quickly. And, and it's going to be so much worse on polling day. That is voter suppression. You're not providing the machinery for a proper democracy. So how many people have been put off voting? How many people haven't been able to fulfill their voting plan? How many people are putting it off till polling day and then we'll just go on the day, oh, you know what, I really can't face it. Now that might just as well be Republicans who are less keen. And also Republicans have kind of cut themselves down to having that one day of voting because they think early voting is for wusses or something bizarre, largely by the complete nonsense spouted by the president. So those are things that I think we need to be watching out for. But it seems that we are looking at record turnout. Turnout is usually good for the Democrats, but both sides' bases seem to be pretty enthused. So it's going to come down to the swing votes in the middle.
Absolutely. Are there any states in particular that you'll be watching as a bellwether? Because the definition of a swing state in this election has changed a bit. We are only 9-4 that Biden wins Texas. Unheard of, right? In pretty much all of presidential election history. So where do you see the bellwether as being? The most likely tipping point state, roughly models estimates Pennsylvania.
Yeah, Pennsylvania is probably the tipping point. Watch Florida. Trump may well win Florida, but how much he wins it by will be an interesting indicator, and we're likely to see that result on the night. So it will give us a real sense of where, I mean, Biden is up in Florida, but not by much, not by enough to be anything like comfortable about taking it home. So I think that and Trump, if Trump loses Florida, that's it, game over from him. There's really no other path to victory. Biden doesn't need Florida as long as he can get Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Arizona. But we are also looking at not knowing the result on the 4th, or possibly the 5th, 6th, or 7th of November.
Absolutely, and that'll be an interesting thing to see in terms of the in-running race. We've talked about the key issues, and we have talked about some of the swing states. To sort of come to the long and short of it, what do you think will happen, and do you think there's any betting value to be had?
Well, as you know, because I told you, I don't really understand odds and how they work, because I'm, despite being the granddaughter of a very eminent statistician, it's not my wheelhouse at all. But
I'm here to explain, here to help. I mean, just quickly, actually, if anybody is watching this and doesn't understand, we bet in fractional odds here at Star. So the number on the right is what you have to stake to win the number on the left in profit. So for instance, for a 7-2 shot, if you have £2 on and you're successful, you'll win 7 and you'll get that back plus your stake, if that makes any sense.
That is the most helpful explanation I have ever had. Thank you.
That's absolutely fine. So if anybody is watching this for the first time, that's how it works. Do go on.
I think I would bet on some of the more interesting Senate races. The Democrats are trying to get control of the Senate, and they are favoured to do so, but not highly favoured to do so, whereas they're highly favoured to keep the House and heavily favoured to win the presidency at the moment. So I think the Senate is probably where the knife edge is. So have a look at some of those races. Kristen Sinema is it Arizona? Martha McSally in Arizona. It could well be losing. I think Susan Collins in Maine has finally pissed off enough of those sort of main.
Finally, after sort of what feels like an eternity of being one of the only senators who you thought, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? What are you going to do with me for sort of 3 and a bit years? I do agree. Probably if the national polling is to be believed, I think the carryover effect will probably take her out, and many people probably celebrate that.
I think, on the other hand, Doug Jones is probably not going to hang on in Alabama. Alabama was never supposed to be a Democratic state, and it was only because Doug Jones is a decent enough senator, but he was up against like the world's second worst human being, the worst one being the president of. But it was a 1,000,000 to 1 shot. But they just happened to all the things came together, and the Republicans haven't been quite so stupid in their choice of contender with Doug Jones this time around.
Absolutely. And anything on the national stage for you? We do have an electoral college handicap. We are 5-6 Biden, giving away 81.5 electoral college votes. We're 20-21 Biden, giving away 100.5 electoral college votes. We've also got markets on the popular vote for Trump. We are 16-20 under 30. We're also actually 7-4 that he gets between 45 and 49.99%, and I believe we are 5-4 actually that he gets between 40 and 45.99%, or 44.99%, I should say. Anything interesting from those prices?
I think he's likely to get between 40 and 45% of the national vote. That doesn't mean that he won't win the electoral college, and that's the key factor here. It's how those votes shake down. if what you get is heaps and heaps of votes in California and New York.
A la 2016.
Yeah, a la 2016. And they don't turn out Democrats in Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, then we could see a repeat with an even higher national vote advantage. That then will raise all sorts of questions about whether the supposed democratic beacon of the world is actually a democracy at all.
Right, that's quite the note to end off on. Emma Burnell, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, William. Lovely to see you.
And you too. Thank you very much for watching. And don't forget, for all of the very best odds, simply head to starsports.bet/politics. Thank you very much for watching a special episode of The Polling Station, and stay tuned for much more next week.